God is destroying your life on purpose and you'll still thank Him for it. There are moments when everything falls apart at once. Money disappears, plans turn to dust, people walk away, and there you are, standing in the middle of chaos, trying to figure out what you did wrong. But what if I told you you didn't do anything wrong? What if this entire collapse isn't punishment, but the most precise and intentional thing that has ever happened in your life? The truth no one tells you is brutal. God doesn't fix fragile structures. He tears them down. Completely. From the ground up. And yes, it hurts exactly because it's working. There are times in life when everything starts collapsing at once. Money gets tight, plans fail, relationships break, and you're left there, in the middle of it all, trying to understand where you went wrong. The pain is real. The sense of ruin is suffocating. And the hardest part of all, the silence of God. No answers, no signs, no clear direction. Just chaos unfolding slowly. But what if I told you that maybe you're not being punished? That this collapse isn't the end but the beginning of an extremely precise spiritual surgery? It may be hard to accept right now, but often what looks like destruction is actually strategic demolition. A divine architecture repositioning everything that was out of alignment, even if you can't see it yet. The truth almost no one talks about is this: God doesn't renovate weak structures, He tears them down and rebuilds from scratch. And that's exactly why it hurts so much. Because along with what's falling apart, your attachments go with it. Your illusions. Your false sense of security. Even parts of your identity. But stay with me until the end, because what feels like loss today might be the greatest rebuilding movement of your life, and one day, you'll look back and be grateful for it. You need to understand something that will completely change how you see this moment. The collapse you're experiencing is not punishment. I know the pain feels personal, and the destruction makes it seem like something went terribly wrong. But in reality, this may be a spiritual surgery in progress. And let's be honest, no one walks into surgery smiling. It's uncomfortable, invasive, and often silent. But the goal is never to destroy you, it's to save something greater within you. God's silence during this process is what disorients you the most. You search for answers, try to find meaning, ask for divine direction, and what you get is silence. But this silence isn't empty, it's strategic. It's in this space that invisible preparation happens. Your mind begins to break free from old patterns, and your perception starts to expand. It's as if everything is being recalibrated internally, even if externally it still looks like chaos. Now let me show you something most people don't realize. What you used to call stability was often just a comfort zone built on fragile structures. There was attachment, maybe even emotional dependence, and an illusion of control that wouldn't have lasted much longer. When it breaks, it hurts. Of course it does. But this demolition isn't here to weaken you, it's here to align you with something stronger. And that leads us to the next point. There's a logic not everyone is ready to accept. Before any real reconstruction, there must be demolition. And this isn't random, it's a highly precise divine design. God doesn't patch up weak foundations, He goes straight to the root. And when the foundation is out of alignment with your purpose, decoration won't fix it. It has to come down. That's why some collapses feel so complete, because they're hitting exactly what couldn't continue. Think about it: if you build a house on sand, it doesn't matter how much you invest in finishing, it will fall. Life works the same way. Many times, you were progressing, growing, even prospering, but on a foundation that lacked spiritual roots. Then comes reconstruction. First discomfort, then clearing, and only then does something new begin, stronger, more stable, more aligned with your destiny. The problem is, in the middle of this process, we try to negotiate with the demolition. We want to save parts, hold on to pieces, keep what was already unsustainable. But that blocks the flow of transformation. Reconstruction requires surrender. It requires letting go. It requires trust. And that's where most people get stuck, because letting go of what's familiar is terrifying. But that fear is exactly the sign that something greater is being prepared. Let's be honest, the biggest problem isn't always what's falling apart, it's how attached you still are to what should have already left your life. Attachment creates a false sense of security, a fragile stability that traps you. It could be a relationship, a project, a status, something no longer aligned with your purpose, but that you insist on holding onto out of fear. This attachment is often tied to emotional dependence and even identity. You begin to define yourself by what you have, what you've built, the role you play. And when it collapses, it doesn't feel like you're losing something external, it feels like you're losing yourself. But in truth, what's being removed are masks that no longer support your evolution. And here's something important: letting go isn't losing, it's making space. It's stepping out of illusion and into alignment with what actually matters. Yes, it involves pain. Yes, it involves uncertainty. Yes, it pulls you out of your comfort zone. But without it, there is no real growth. And when you start to understand this, you realize the collapse isn't random, it has direction. Nothing happening to you is by chance. It may seem random, it may feel unfair, but there is divine direction even in the fall. Every loss, every break, every moment of ruin carries a specific lesson. It's what we can call a strategic fall. Not the end, but a repositioning. The problem is, when the mind is in pain, it looks for blame or quick answers. Why is this happening to me? But maybe the more powerful question is, what is this making space for? That shift in perception triggers a massive internal transformation. You stop being a victim and start becoming aware. And when that shift happens, something interesting unfolds. You begin to notice patterns you couldn't see before. Repeated decisions. Cycles that led nowhere. Paths that needed to end. The collapse reveals all of this brutally, but necessarily. And that clarity prepares you for the next step, a mindset shift. Once the collapse exposes what was hidden, a crucial phase begins: changing your mindset. Because there's no point rebuilding your life with the same mind that created fragile structures in the first place. Pain has a very clear role here. It breaks old patterns. If you pay attention, you'll realize that many past decisions were made on autopilot. Without awareness. Driven by fear, insecurity, or the need for validation. This is a moment of recalibration. Your mind needs to shift from survival mode into expansion mode. And that requires intentional learning. Reading books like Think and Grow Rich, for example, helps reprogram how you see prosperity, purpose, and growth. This isn't about temporary motivation, it's about lasting internal transformation. Change begins when you take responsibility. Not blame, responsibility. You start observing your thoughts, your reactions, your choices. And gradually, you build a new perception of reality. That internal shift prepares you for more aligned decisions, and that changes everything moving forward. Now here comes one of the hardest parts: letting go. Because your natural instinct, in the middle of collapse, is to resist. To hold on. To recover what was lost. To maintain control. But that blocks the flow of reconstruction. Resisting demolition is like trying to hold up a collapsing building, you only get hurt more. Letting go isn't giving up, it's aligning. It's understanding that something greater is unfolding. And yes, this requires active faith. Not emotional faith, but practical trust, expressed through action. For example, stop insisting on situations that clearly have no direction anymore. Stop feeding cycles that only drain you. When you let go, something remarkable happens: flow returns. Things begin to reorganize naturally. New opportunities arise. New connections appear. New ideas come. Not because everything suddenly became easy, but because you stopped fighting what needed to happen. And that opens space to understand the true value of loss. No one likes to lose. But loss plays a fundamental role in growth. Major breakthroughs often come after major breakdowns. Not despite them but because of them. Adversity forces a level of evolution that comfort never could. If you study success stories, you'll notice a pattern before real prosperity. There was loss, ruin, collapse. That's not coincidence, it's part of the strengthening process. Resilience is built in those moments. And it's what sustains growth afterward. The question is, will you use this loss as fuel or as a prison? Because you can grow or shut down. You can learn or become bitter. And that internal choice defines who you become in the next phase. That's why reconstruction must begin from within. Before any external change, internal rebuilding must happen. Your mind, your patterns, your way of thinking, all of it needs to be reorganized. Otherwise, you might gain new things only to lose them again. Because the foundation hasn't changed. This is the moment to invest in self-awareness. Observe your emotions. Understand your triggers. Identify where attachment or fear still exists. Simple practices like journaling your thoughts daily or meditating for a few minutes can already bring more clarity. Internal reconstruction builds a solid foundation. And when that foundation is strong, the external world starts aligning naturally. Decisions become clearer. Paths more defined. And then you begin building something different, something rooted. There's a huge difference between ordinary prosperity and purpose-driven prosperity. The first is unstable, it depends on external factors and fluctuates constantly. The second has spiritual roots. It comes from alignment, awareness, and divine direction. When you go through a collapse and allow yourself to rebuild properly, your relationship with money, success, and opportunity changes completely. You stop chasing everything and start choosing wisely. Not every opportunity is aligned, and now you can see that. This kind of prosperity brings stability. Not just financially but emotionally and spiritually. Because something crucial was broken before: false identities. Collapse has a powerful effect, it tears down masks. What you used as identity, status, money, relationships begins to disappear. And then comes the uncomfortable question: who are you without all of that? The ego resists this deeply. Because it feeds on those external references. But this fall creates space for real self-awareness. You begin to see yourself without filters. Without illusions. And as uncomfortable as that ice, it's liberating. Because it allows you to build a more authentic identity aligned with who you truly are. And that foundation supports a much stronger evolution. The collapse doesn't define you, it reveals you. Some people come out bitter, closed off, distrustful. Others come out stronger, more aware, with emotional and spiritual authority. The difference isn't what happened, it's how it was processed. Those who choose to learn, grow. Those who resist, harden. And that directly impacts the next phase of life. Because in the end, the greatest gain isn't what you rebuild externally, it's who you become internally. And that stronger version is forged in silence. God's silence isn't absence, it's strategy. This is where faith is truly tested. No signs. No clear answers. No guarantees. This is where you decide whether to keep going or give up. And that decision shapes your spiritual maturity. Because real faith doesn't depend on evidence, it depends on trust. And while everything seems still, something is happening. You just can't see it yet. Most of the reconstruction happens in the invisible. While you think nothing is changing, deep adjustments are being made. It's like building a foundation. One sees it, but it's the most important part. This silent process is preparing something far greater. And when it finally becomes visible, it looks like a miracle to others. But you'll know it was process. It was preparation. It was silent transformation. After all this, a new phase begins. Not a patched-up version of your old life but a strong structure built on a different foundation. Decisions are more conscious. Paths more aligned. Relationships healthier. There's more clarity. More direction. And most importantly, more stability. Because now there are roots. Now everything comes down to one choice. You can stay trapped in the pain or use it as a turning point. You can keep trying to understand the past or start building the future. You can resist or align. And that decision changes everything. To cooperate with the process is to trust even without understanding. To keep walking even without seeing. It's developing active faith. Practical trust. A posture of alignment. And when you do that, reconstruction happens. Not in your time but in the right time. Now tell me honestly, are you still looking at this moment as ruin, or can you already see it as the beginning of reconstruction? How many things in your life were built on fragile structures? How many decisions were made on autopilot without awareness, without alignment with your true purpose? What if this collapse is actually the greatest invitation you've ever received to grow, to evolve, and to access a level of real prosperity you would never have been able to sustain before? So the question is, will you keep resisting or will you align with this process? The choice is yours. But one thing is certain: those who choose to trust, who choose to develop active faith, who choose to keep walking even in God's silence, come out of this process with strength, maturity, authority, and a completely new vision of life. And if this message resonated with you, don't stop here. Subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications, and stay on this path. Because this isn't just content. It's preparation for the next phase of your life.